Hey y'all, it's Stephen Van Kampen-Lewis on July 31st, and today I want to take a deep dive into Cattleya amethystoglossa. And what I want to do is talk a little bit about where it's from, what its natural habitat looks like, and I also want to talk a little bit about its care, at least how I've been caring for it, and the things that I've noticed while growing it. One of the reasons that I really want to talk about this species is because it's one of my favorites. It is a really rewarding species with more and more color varieties coming online, and as I'm able to sort of bring in more of these color varieties, I really enjoy growing it more and more, and I'm expecting some of these color varieties to be really cool that I'll get to see for the first time in real life as the plants that I'm importing from Brazil eventually get larger and larger and start to bloom. And when I say different color varieties, I mean there's the typical, the tipo, which is a pink with spots. We also have the polyploid versions, which I've done comparing and contrasting videos for you, where I have a tipo 2N next to a tipo 4N, and there's a really big difference. There's also cerulea that are becoming more and more common in the market. There's a golden variety, there's semi-albas, there's spotless, there's a whole bunch of different types. So let's take a quick look at where this particular species is from and where and some of its habits. So as you can see on this map here, this is a species that's thought to only occur in the state of Bahia in Brazil, but I've also read that it could occur in other states, including the state of Pernambuco, which is quite a bit farther north, the state of Minas Gerais, or even the state of Espírito Santo, just to the south of the red that you see here in this map. And once again, I'd like to show you on Google Earth a little closer up of where the species could be found. And again, we'll zoom in here on the state of Bahia, and the species is known from the mountainous areas, so those areas that are closest to the Atlantic Ocean but are still upslope. And then of course there's the state of Pernambuco, just to the north of the state of Bahia, and then south of there you see the state of Minas Gerais and the state of Espírito Santo. Again, these are the species is going to be found high up in the trees in these sort of mountainous areas where there's a lot of humidity, a lot of moisture just about all year round, very pleasant temperatures, and ultimately it's not going to get a whole lot of seasonal variability. You can see where those green areas there at the base of those mountains, those are some of the areas where this particular species is found. Now, as far as care is concerned, it's a pretty carefree species in my opinion, although I know that some folks have difficulty with the bifoliates. And of course, Cattleya amethystoglossa is one of the bifoliates. I find that it does well in sort of typical Cattleya conditions, in that you have a well-draining media. The roots are going to approach dryness, but not necessarily be completely dry during active growth season. And then during dormancy, you'll reduce water, not eliminate it completely, but to be honest, I've actually found that a lot of the bifoliates will just keep growing through the cold season if you continue watering them. So they're not quite as hardcore about having a dormancy or having really seasonal growth patterns. Although Cattleya amethystoglossa does seem to have a really distinctive bloom time. So while it can grow just about any time of year, the blooming, it will always be in that spring time. So as I've shown in multiple videos, I typically grow this in well-draining media. So typically it's going to be a clay pot, and a large plant will have a large pot, of course. I use orchiata bark so that it dries fairly quickly and there's plenty of air movement within the pot. These guys like really bright conditions, not so bright obviously that it's going to burn your leaves, but if you're thinking about Cattleya conditions in your mind, you can probably take those Cattleya conditions and increase the light just a little bit and it'll be fine. In fact, it'll probably bloom a little better if you're growing it on the brighter side of Cattleya conditions. Fertilizer is nothing special. I fertilize my plants basically from early April until mid-November, and then I just stop fertilizing. Most of my plants don't really grow a whole lot during that winter space, but if you see your Cattleya amethystoglossa actually putting on active new growth during the winter season, you can decide to fertilize, but you don't necessarily have to. Typically the fertilizers that are already in your pot from the growing season will carry the plant through this sort of dormant period when it's not actually dormant. So I'll say during the cool season when this species might still be growing. Of course, bifoliates are really sensitive to repotting. A lot of orchids are, but bifoliates can, if you don't repot at the exact right time, the plant's probably going to either be set back or just straight up die. And those are our lessons learned on my part for years of growing. I've learned that the hard way. Once you start repotting your plants, not seasonally, like every spring I'm going to repot my Cattleya amethystoglossa, it should be in your mind, you should be thinking, okay, the springtime, this new growth is coming in, and then as the new growth gets pretty close to maturity, not all the way, typically that's when you'll see those little root nubbins poke out the bottom, and that is the perfect time. The moment you see little teeny tiny pimples at the bottom of the new growth, that's when you're going to want to repot. Not when the roots are 1 inch long or 2 inches long. That's the worst time to repot. In fact, that's the time you say, no, I'm not going to repot, because you'll probably break the roots and that will set back the plant as well. So repotting once those new little root nubbins are just tiny little pimples, that's the perfect time to do this. So finally, this group seems to do just fine in very hot temperatures, as we have here in Texas. Today, I believe, is probably day 51 of 100-degree temperatures for this year here in 2022, which is unusually hot even for Texas. But still, that gives an idea of how many days of very hot temperatures these plants can endure and seem to do just fine. And so my plants are doing great. I've got a few with leaf burn because of my move, and I'm trying to figure out where the sun falls right now, as many outdoor growers do. But ultimately, they're all doing really, really well. One final thing I want to say about these guys is that their pseudobulbs are more like canes, right? They're these sort of long, skinny things that don't store a lot of water, or I should say nutrients, for drought. So this is not a group that really needs or wants any kind of an extended dry period. While the roots want to dry off and be in an airy, well-drained media, they don't need to be completely dry between waterings while in active growth. In fact, the lack of a pseudobulb, or sort of a bulbous nutrition storage center, is an indication, and should be an indication in your mind, that this is not a plant that dries out for extended periods. So hard winter rest is not really the way to go with them, and having your plant dry excessively between waterings is also not necessarily a great idea.